A streak of aerodynamic perfection shoots across the German landscape. At 200 plus kilometers an hour, it leaves everything else in the dust. So fast that 65,000 people count on it every day to get them where they're going. So safe that in 7 years of service, Germany's intercity express trains travel more than 1 billion kilometers without a serious accident. Until June 3rd, 1998. ICE train number 884 closes in on the small town of Eschede. Suddenly, passengers hear a loud bang, like an explosion. The train starts to shake. A little further down the track, catastrophe. In less than 5 seconds, the pride of Germany's rail fleet derails and piles into a concrete bridge. "101 dead, 105 injured. Passengers like Udo Bausch so seriously hurt that his life will never be the same again. It's the worst high-speed rail disaster ever. Was Intercity Express train number 884 derailed by something on the track? Was there a problem with the bridge? Or was there a flaw in the train itself? Investigators must work quickly to find out if this was a freak accident or if other trains and other passengers are at risk. The town of Eschede in northern Germany, population 4,000. A quiet little town where not much happens. Such a small dot on the map that intercity express trains just whip right through without stopping. Andreas Effenhausen, a local policeman, has patrolled this area for years. On the morning of June 3rd, 1998, Effenhausen started work earlier than usual.
June 3rd is my daughter's birthday, so that's why I took the early shift that day, so I would be free in the afternoon. I went to work in the morning together with my partner on regular patrol duty.
That regular patrol will become one of the most irregular in his career. And this peaceful little town will lose its anonymity. Soon, the whole world will know about Eschede. Its name will be associated with disaster. At 10:30 a.m. The train pulls into Hanover Station, 50 kilometers southwest of Eschede. This will be the last stop before its final destination, Hamburg. 30-year-old Udo Bausch, a businessman, is heading there for a meeting. He has a lot on his mind.
My wife took me to the train that day, which was unusual. I got in, looked for a single compartment in order to be able to prepare myself for the meeting. I found a single compartment so I could work on the train, sat down, and opened my laptop.
10:33 a.m. Intercity Express train number 884 leaves Hanover Station. Outside city limits, it accelerates to 200 kilometers per hour. At the front of the train, in carriage number 1, Sigrid Schubert is en route north for a seaside holiday, along with her child Andre and boyfriend Jörg Dittmann.
We were just settling down to sleep for a bit. We took off our shoes to be more comfortable. Andre was sitting beside the window, Jörg across from me.
A couple of minutes before 11 a.m. Suddenly, a loud noise jolts the passengers at the front of the train.
All of a sudden, there was a huge explosion. I thought a bomb had exploded.
It was an incredible sound, like a plane breaking through the sound barrier. It was right beside my ear.
The train starts to rattle and shake.
Then the floor split open below us. I don't know exactly what it was, but something came shooting through the floor.
We looked at each other horrified. I was saying to myself, wow, this is incredible. This is not good. And then I said to Sigrid and Andre, come on, let's get out of here.
Sigrid and Andre are finding it hard to keep their balance. They crawl back into carriage number 2 and huddle on the floor.
As I was running, the carriages had started to skid and rattle. I told the conductor something serious has happened in the front.
Amazingly, passengers at the back of the train don't feel those first signs of trouble. Udo Bausch continues to work. Little does he know, disaster is just moments away.
Back in carriage number 12, I didn't really notice the rattling noise, as was reported by other passengers. Maybe because I was so engrossed in my work. I didn't really take it seriously.
The train is approaching a bridge underpass, a road crossing on the outskirts of Eschede. Jörg and the conductor have just made it back to carriage number 1.
When we arrived at our compartment, and when I wanted to point to what had happened, there was a huge bang, a boom.
It was so big, at first we thought we had collided with another train. And then everything happened very fast.
And then I saw a bright light, and I was thinking, Jörg, your luck has simply run out.
The time is 10:59 a.m.
Within seconds, I was hurled around in the train compartment from left to right, from up to down.
In Eschede, people hear a crash. "12 kilometers away, Officer Effenhausen gets an urgent call to rush to Eschede. He is among the first to arrive at the crash site.
And I saw this train there, pushed together, crushed, all these pieces. At first I was completely devastated. What struck me was this terrible silence. There were no sounds. Total quiet, not a bird chirping. Nothing that can normally be heard at this time of year. You can only describe it as deathly quiet.
Inside carriage number 1, Jörg and the conductor cannot believe they are still alive.
I immediately looked back to see if the second carriage was still there, and then I could see that it was slanted, and then I saw Sigrid and Andre, and then I asked them if they were okay and got them out of the carriage.
In what remains of carriage number 12, Udo Bausch is not so lucky. He lies crushed in the wreckage.
I could tell that I must be badly hurt. that I must have broken a lot of bones because I could feel a lot of pain, especially on my left side. At that moment, I was terrified. I thought I would never get out of there, that my whole life was destroyed.
By now, news of the accident is spreading quickly. Matthias Stahlmann, a local pastor, gets word that his help is urgently needed.
The dispatcher then described to me that there was a train that had crashed into a bridge, that a car had been obstructing the track. They were thinking about 20 dead.
In fact, 96 passengers on train number 884 died instantly. Officer Effenhausen has started to hunt through the wreckage. He is still shaken, but he knows what he has to do.
Bin dann mehr so aus dem Antrieb raus einfach losgegangen.
Instinctively, I started moving. Walked around the train and came to a spot where I just started calling hello. I don't know why I said that.
But investigators need answers quickly. Emergency crews have discovered an automobile under the wreckage. Did it cause the accident? Or did something else make Intercity Express train number 884 derail? Was there something on the track? Could it have been a problem with the bridge? Or was there a flaw in the train itself? As a precaution, 60 Intercity Express trains are taken out of service for inspection. For all remaining trains, speed limits are drastically reduced. The investigators are under a lot of pressure to come up with answers so Germany can restore train service and the faith of a horrified public. Rescuers and investigators rush to the crash site of Intercity Express train number 884 near Eschede in northern Germany. None of the rescuers are prepared for the scene of devastation.
My first thought actually was, it can't be real. This is staged. They are doing catastrophe training. This can't be. The next thought crossing your mind then is, but who would ruin an entire ICE train? It must be real.
Officer Andreas Effenhausen, a local policeman, has arrived on site minutes after the crash. He picks through the wreckage around carriage number 12. It seems impossible that anyone has survived in this part of the train, but Effenhausen calls out in the eerie silence.
Ich hatte irgendwann die Stimme gehört in meinem Lebensretter, dem Andreas, und habe dann natürlich flehend.
At some point, I heard the voice of my lifesaver, Andreas. I reacted immediately and called, "Hello, hello, I'm here. My name is Udo Bauch. Can you please help me? I was so afraid of dying. I was ecstatic to hear his voice."
Effenhausen rushes to get a rescue team to carriage number 12. There's so much rubble over such a big area that every step is a challenge. Investigators have now joined rescuers at the accident site, and they too are poring over the wreckage.
You question eyewitnesses to try to get a picture of what has happened.
Gunnar Bosa is an engineer hired to investigate the accident for the state attorney. He knows from experience that every second counts once investigators hit the scene.
You have to check the design of the engine drive. You have to note exactly what position the carriages are in. You have to check out both the direction the train was going and the direction it was coming from, looking for any irregularities that could have caused the accident.
By now, the media has caught wind of what's happened at Eschede. The site is crawling with reporters and camera crews.
Nobody wanted to believe it.
Claudia Beplar-Kanaki is a television reporter who covered the story.
Disbelief, really, spread all over Germany.
Within hours, the accident is making headlines around the world.
Bob Lobby?
This accident, an ocean away, is of big interest to Bob Lobby at the National Transportation and Safety Board in Washington.
This morning? It happened this morning?
The United States is in the process of starting up its own high-speed service, and if there are lessons to be learned from Eschede, they need to know now.
Okay. I'll be there as soon as I can.
He and a team get on a plane to Germany to see what they can learn.
It affected everybody in the high-speed rail industry because high-speed rail up to that point had been so safe.
Back at the accident site, in the rush to get the first news reports out, journalists speculate that a demolished automobile under the wreckage played a role.
Today's disaster started with a car going through the road bridge's flimsy barrier and crashing on its side onto the line. Within moments, it was hit by the train going at 125 miles an hour.
Will the investigators find evidence that supports this theory?
The evidence will only last so long. It's perishable. As rescue operations are going on, as wreckage is cleared, things will change and evidence can be lost.
At this site, the chances of disturbing evidence are big. Almost 2,000 people are taking part in the rescue. Officer Andreas Effinghausen has alerted paramedics that Udo Bausch is trapped in carriage number 12.
But I was still afraid. How long is this going to take? My pain was getting worse.
Effinghausen has joined one of the emergency teams. Inside the demolished carriages, they see things too terrible to describe. Bodies mangled and dismembered on impact. But there's another scene that will haunt Effinghausen long after the wreckage is gone.
On the first bench on the right side, an elderly couple was sitting there, looking as if they were asleep, their heads slightly tilted forward, like they were sleeping. That was the impression. They were still sitting there in their seats, but they were both dead.
The bodies were covered, and we were asked by firemen to say a brief prayer and give a blessing.
For the investigators, there is one small mercy. The accident site is divided into two distinct parts by the demolished bridge. Mark Willer, with Germany's Federal Department of Railways, says they had to come up with another way to get there.
We were lucky because the investigators could go into areas where no rescue action was taking place. That is, the areas in front of the bridge and ahead of the accident scene.
In front of the bridge are the first 4 carriages, the ones that made it through before the bridge collapsed. Carriages 1 and 2 are derailed, but sitting on the track. There's some damage, including a broken wheel on carriage number 1. Carriage number 3 is in worse shape. It looks like it hit something before it came to a stop. Carriage number 4 has left the track altogether.
The 4th car passed under the bridge and then drove to the right, out into the field, tumbled over, and came to a rest diagonal to the track.
The lead locomotive that was pulling the train is nowhere in sight. That's because it automatically decoupled from the rest of the train and traveled by itself for more than a kilometer before coming to a stop past Eschede station. That lead locomotive provides investigators with a key clue.
We could see that the engine, that is, the locomotive at the front of the train, was undamaged.
The fact that the engine's not damaged proves that there couldn't have been a car in the path of the oncoming locomotive. But there is a vehicle under the wreckage. How did it get there? And where are its occupants? Today's high-speed trains regularly exceed 200 kilometers an hour, and in testing have reached a breathtaking 500 kilometers an hour. Getting there quickly is what it's all about. And until June 1998, not many passengers thought about the price of speed. The crash of Intercity Express train number 884 outside the German town of Eschede presents a stark illustration. The higher the speed, the more violent the impact, and the greater the human toll. Almost 100 people died instantly, and many survivors are still trapped, including Udo Bausch in the wreckage of carriage number 12.
Und dann kann ich mich erinnern, wie dann ein Arzt oder
And then I remember a doctor or a paramedic giving me a needle because of the severe pain. And as a side effect of the painkiller, my breathing stopped.
Nebenwirkung dieses Schmerzmittels hatte ich Atemstillstand.
By then, he has slipped into a coma. His skull is broken in 2 places, his jaw in 4 different places. He also has shattered bones in his face and shoulder, and he's losing massive amounts of blood from a wound in his leg. A helicopter rushes him to hospital. By 1:30 p.m., 2.5 hours after the fatal crash, most of the injured have been taken to hospitals across northern Germany. But in the end, 101 people are dead. The victims include 2 people who had not been passengers on the train. Investigators are surprised to discover that they were railway maintenance workers. They were working near the bridge as the train came through. Their automobile had been parked beside the track, and that's the vehicle that investigators had discovered under the wreckage. In fact, the car had nothing to do with the accident. It was in the wrong place at the wrong time and got swept up in the derailment. So that's one mystery solved, but there are others. What role did the bridge play? The last 7 carriages and the rear locomotive plowed right into it. Yet, it's in the front part of the train that made it under the bridge that investigators find their first solid clue. An 8-meter-long piece of rail has shot through the floor.
Half of the guardrail went from the bottom of the first car all the way through the car up through the roof. The second piece of guardrail that broke off skewered the first 2 cars together and traveled actually right through the passenger vestibule that connects the 2 cars and embedded itself in the frame of the second car.
How did a piece of rail get ripped up and skewer 2 carriages together?
It could not have arrived there as a result of the train leaving the track. Something must have happened before that. It had to be quickly investigated.
And there's something else to explore. On the stretch of track leading up to the bridge, investigators come across bizarre markings on the concrete railroad ties. Could this lead them to the cause of the accident? Or is it a false lead, taking them down the track to a dead end? It is the afternoon of June 3rd, 1998, a few hours after a high-speed train has crashed in northern Germany. The accident investigators seem to be making progress. They've zeroed in on an intriguing trail of damage marks on the concrete ties. They follow the marks back in the direction the train was coming from. The marks start 5.5 kilometers before the accident site. And nearby, investigators discover small pieces of debris.
Des Wagenkastens von diesem Mittelwagen.
The parts from the undercarriage consisted of pieces that were 5 to 10 centimeters in size, covered with plastic and metal.
There are also tiny chunks of rubber material, which turn out to be important evidence. It's exactly the kind of material found inside the wheels of Germany's high-speed trains. What does it mean? Investigators are now able to make a crucial connection between the bits of rubber and something they spotted earlier at the accident site. Something they had noticed on carriage number 1, on the rear bogie, or swivel assembly. A broken wheel. It's a major breakthrough.
The train was coming from Hanover on the left track here. About 5.5 kilometers before the bridge, the wheel on the rear bogie of the first carriage broke.
The break is in the rim, the outside layer of the wheel, the part that comes into contact with the track. The broken rim separates from the inner part of the wheel and gets caught under the train. That explains what passengers in carriage number 1 heard just before the crash.
There was this terrible, crazy bang, exactly under the armrest of Sigrid and Andre.
They didn't realize it at the time, but the loud bang was the wheel rim breaking and slamming into the bogie with such force that the floor beneath them literally split open. But what caused the wheel to break? Is it possible it slammed into something on the track? Investigators examine the area where the wheel broke and quickly rule out this scenario. There's no sign of anything on the track, except the small pieces of debris that have come off the train. So, is it possible there was a fatal flaw in the wheel itself? This is a key question. Everyone wants to know whether this was one tragic, isolated incident, or whether other wheels are putting other trains at risk. As investigators delve into the wheel's history, they discover that ever since Germany's intercity express trains first hit the track in the early 90s, they've been controversial. In the beginning, they were equipped with something called the monoblock wheel.
Well, a monoblock wheel is made of cast steel. It's one piece. If you hit it with a hammer, it'll ring like a bell.
Monoblock wheels are similar to the wheels on other high-speed trains around the world, like those in Japan and France. But when German rail executives took test rides on the first intercity express train,